right near East Palestine in Ohio with the truth about what is happening. See, it's very, very difficult to get a clear story as to what has actually gone on in this place. We're hearing about the mushroom cloud, we're hearing about the toxic chemicals that have been released into the air. But Dr. Chambers, as usual, being the hero that he is, has run to the scene. Dr. Chambers, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Maria. Yeah, this thing, this was a God thing. Me being here, I didn't plan on coming up here. I wasn't prepared. I'm out of uniform now. I don't have the same support systems that I had then. But a bunch of Americans got together, former military guys, just people on the ground here in this area. That I'm talking about three different states that have been affected by this scare, and that's what I'm going to call it right now. And then I'll get into that. This scare. So I found out a couple of days. Well, I knew about it for a couple of days, but I was down in Florida. I had been in Texas and working some different operations with actually some folks on the food scarcity thing that we were possibly going to look at. And so we're finding ways to grow things and more efficiently. But in that discussion while I was there, we were thinking, hey, if something does come down, we need to get up there quickly, test the ground so that we can get this remediated, so that we can then fix the problem. Well, in my travel drive up here, it was a 19-hour drive to get up to the location. I didn't go straight into the hot zone. I stayed outside of it, uh, away from where I thought the cloud would be and settling in. I passed through towns. I saw soot. I did see it. I've got a picture of an American flag that's the white parts of it are colored black from soot that came through the air. There was an explosion. I can say that. Yes. There was a train derailment. Yes. Was it mismanaged? Yes, it was. I would say, personal opinion, purposefully. Now I'll get into the reason why. And so then I get on the ground and I realize that my mission has changed now, because I need to talk to people on the ground. That's what we used to do in special forces. We'd go down range, talk to people in different countries and say, hey, what's going on here? Talk to the key leaders. We call that a key leader engagement. And you tell me, you've lived here, I mean, some of these people, 77 years, 50 years, whatever. These are key people in the area. We're talking about mid-level oil industry. This is the second largest oil industry in the lower 48 states. Comes out of from Pennsylvania down the Ohio River Valley. There's lots of fracking and things that take place here. There's lots of there's a big fault line that goes down through the Ohio River Valley, so there's a tectonic plate area. There's seismography that takes place there. They watch these things because as they're drilling, these are concerns. But what I'm seeing is a different picture. Well, what I was presented on, just not even mainstream media, because even there, but I'm going to say people that are fear mongers that are out there talking about this, that we must evacuate the eastern seaboard of the United States at this point. Because where are you going to go? The western United States? The only thing they got out there is California. Nobody wants to go there anymore. So, but honestly, we we had to get the truth, and I was just seeking the truth to go help people with their ranches, with their farms, to reclaim their soil so they grow things again, because we can get to it quickly with biomes that actually eat anything, including radioactivity, radioactive particles. But the mission in my mind changed to, I need to get to the truth. So then I went to, okay, let's start talking truth. So we met with some key leaders, one of which I'm going to tell you about the first one. And let me tell you something. When I'm meeting in these groups in these little town halls, and they find out that Pete Chambers has come, I'm like, well, how did you find that out? Well, I guess all the media is talking, and they're saying, well, he's coming up there to do a survey. So these people say, well, have him come to us first. I meet this room, and they say, yeah, I mean, there was an explosion over there. We're used to that up here. This is like industry, not industry central, but oil fields galore, oil, natural gas, all this stuff down this whole valley. All right. And you have some of the best farming land, the breadbasket of America. One of the two, really. You got Kansas, and you have for the wheat and things like that. For out here, the soil is pristine. This is like a gem. This is like Garden of Eden when it comes to growth for this country, for this nation. And so now, if we just think like the deep state, or we think like the globalists, what would you want to take? What would you want to do? And
You'd want to
and
destroy agriculture, move people out of rural
bingo,
areas, scare them into thinking rural areas aren't safe anymore.
right? Because they want everybody in a 15-minute city,
Yes.
right? All right. So the way they do that, this is, now the backward planning, we look at it and we go, okay, wait a minute. So you're meaning I'm in a meeting with all these people, and they say, well, we're not worried about that because we've had those things happen. We've had vinyl chloride plants blow up. There was one that took out 3 blocks of this town in Parkersburg. Okay, so I go down and talk to the people in Parkersburg, and they tell me what happened, and they say, oh yeah, that was 2017. 3 city blocks were blown up when this factory blew up with vinyl chloride. And then we talk about in 2000 and I'm sorry, in 1982, there was a DuPont factory that leaked Teflon into the water. The guys that were next door working on an oil rig were pumping water into the rig as part of the process to get down these shafts. And then none of them lived past the age of 60 because there were chemicals from the Teflon that were leaking into there because they were out there spraying and cleaning things. They got it all over themselves. They didn't realize the absorption. So this is an industrial nightmare kind of place for certain types of career fields. Okay. I think that when you look at this movie that came out, that was a predictive programming movie about the train that derailed in Palestine, East Palestine. Come on.
Yes. But I have some questions, though, because we've got footage that's being shared on, say, Fox News, for example, which I watch Tucker all the time. He's got residents coming on saying they've got chemical burns on their faces. They're being told it's safe to return, but they're having difficulty breathing. Is that the story from all of the people you're talking to, or not really?
Absolutely not. There was some fallout of something. Hydrocarbon, yes, because I saw the soot. Now, it was 150 miles as I'm coming in. It was in that cloud debris field. Got it. And these are honest people. They have no reason to make this up.
Of course.
I believe that happened. I believe there was a cloud. I do believe that. And chemicals do burn, but I don't think it's as severe as what we're thinking, because I think it was blown out of proportion. If the citizens that live here are saying, yeah, we've had these things before, this is not any different to us. How is it being treated on the outside? We don't know. We live here. What are they saying? Well, they're saying this is the worst ecologic disaster in the history of the United States. And they're just going, well, we're not too worried about it. So I had a team of guys that was able to go in to East Palestine. They're driving around. They're looking around. There's nobody in any despair downtown. 2 days after, they're still blocked off because you do have trains and things they got to move off the tracks. But these guys were just there. Now, they reported directly to me. I'm not in their command, but they gave me that report. And I am out, gathering other information from key leaders to corroborate these things, to then come up with a real actionable analysis. And I'm about 2/3 of the way through. But it keeps pointing back to this increased, the sky is falling, the fear mongering, that will push through human osmotic pressure, as our friend Michael Yon talks about. I don't know if you ever talked to him. It's what's happened.
Very, very soon.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to see him in a couple of days in Texas. I'll tell him. But when you look at what happened in Syria, that's war, and people moved. They went across the border into Jordan, right? When you look at the people coming across the southern border, where I was down there last couple of years ago, they are coming from 130 different nations around the world seeking a better life. It's overwhelming the system. We love our migrants. Most of our country is made up of it. But when it overwhelms the system, and then you look for the needle in the needle stack, which is the terrorists that are trying to come across with fentanyl, guns, any kind of other drugs.
Terrorists that are coming across.
Right. And then the human trafficking element and the sex trafficking and the slave trafficking. There's more than just one type. When you look at all that and you see what it's doing, that's a Marxist technique to demoralize a nation, to move people in, to transfer migration, to pull the people that live here out, because they are the hardy people that say, no, we're not going to do this. What they've created over the last 20, 30 years in our country, probably even longer than that, a very needy society in many ways, where they're living off the government dime, and we'll accept that because we don't have jobs right now because they shut them all down after COVID. You see all these things start adding up, and then you see the bigger picture. And that's what I'm trying to develop, is that 40,000 foot view. But my honest assessment right now, as I've seen it, is it's not as bad as we thought. We've taken samples. They're going to labs. It takes a while for the mass spec to come up with an answer. My concern is that the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, our federal agency that governs this type of stuff, our Federal Emergency Management Agency, should be on the site, but it was turned down initially. I don't know if they're there now, but didn't see anything come in right away. If we were the first people getting here after 2 days and driving across country, that stuff should have been flown in immediately if it was that bad. But it was
Right.
turned down by the president. The
Yes,
governor,
but the
hey,
hilarious thing now is that Donald Trump just announced that he's going there within the next week, and
bingo.
immediately they say, "Oh, we're gonna send emergency responses out straight away."
But what does that tell you? Donald Trump's not going to go into a hot zone with dioxin in it. He's not
Interesting.
going to. He wouldn't do that. So that tells you that he's. I believe that he's doing that to reveal that it's safe, to show people that it's safe,
Well,
to
let me
bring
ask
down
you
the
something, Dr.
society.
Chambers. We've got because I've got this information here. This is from Megan Redshaw's Substack. CDC alters webpage days after East Palestine train derailment to make vinyl chloride look less toxic. So the archives of a CDC webpage actually show that for the first time in 9 years, the agency edited toxicity information on vinyl chloride just days after the Ohio train derailment. But the HHS and the EPA are in on it too. So this is very, very interesting. There's the version history, July 2006. No other amendments have been made up until January in 2023. So according to the HHS, the ATSDR peer-reviewed toxicological profile of vinyl chloride succinctly characterizes its toxicologic and adverse health effects and identifies available toxicological information, epidemiological evaluations, and the level of exposure that presents a significant risk to human health. So this is what they've come back with. So for anyone that wants to see that, it is Megan Redshaw's Substack. So my question is it possible that the people that you're talking to that aren't concerned are just listening to, say, the health officials that are saying, or the official narrative that's saying that no, nothing to worry about here, nothing to see here? You know, Pete Buttigieg going out and talking about, I don't know, racism or whatever he talks about, rather than the
Yeah.
problem with the trains. Is it possible that they're
I'm
following the official narrative?
No, I know that for a fact they are not, because these people have been beat down by the whole COVID narrative. They watch us go through the monkeypox narrative. They watch us go through the avian flu narrative. They're watching us go into the Marburg narrative, and they're seeing, and after so many times of they're crying wolf stuff, there ain't no wolf there, but the only wolf is fear. It is the fear that they're instilling, and these people that I'm talking to are not they're not neophytes when it comes to the modern age snowflakes. These are older people that 77, 70, 65 that have been around, that are community leaders, city councilmen, county commissioners, all the different levels. One guy that has an oil company that has 200 oil wells. All right. So we have a great variety of people that are not just going to jump when somebody says, jump.
Oh, that's
They're going to,
fascinating.
yeah,
It's fascinating
these are
because
these,
they've done similar things in Australia, for example, with the flooding, and told residents that you know what they did here. So they flooded Lismore
yeah,
with
yeah.
geoengineering. We believe. Displaced 50,000 people from their homes, and then told them that, oh, we'll offer you a buyback scheme where the government buys back your house so that they have part ownership of it, and we'll also tell people that you really shouldn't return to your homes. Oh, and by the way, insurance agencies probably aren't going to insure your home anymore. Now, in 2018, the mayor of Lismore earmarked that city, signed it off that it was going to be a smart city. So destroying the existing infrastructure and getting people that are rural minded, self-sufficient, living off the land out of that area is crucial for these people. So it's absolutely possible what you're saying. I want to ask you though, what about the footage that we're seeing about people dropping things in the water, and the water looks like it's just filled with these chemicals?
Absolutely. And that is the question that I asked, and I found out the answer to it. And here's the answer. These wells that are out here right now, we are on a fault line. Okay. For years, they've been coming in, they being the people that are supposed to take the waste disposal water and put it in a site and clean it. There's something nefarious going on there, and I haven't figured out completely, but I know this, that these people that run these oil rigs are telling me, and I'm going to get one of them one of the experts, the engineers. I've just got to talk him into it. He doesn't want to talk on a podcast. But if I can do this, he can explain it eloquently. But I'm going to explain it the best way I can. Is the fracture lines that exist are very shallow. They're fracture lines, and there's sand layers, and water typically lives in the sand layer. So when they're drilling down through the sand layer, they know it because they move pipe faster. Right. So we're in the sand layer. We should be seeing some water. No, what's happened is they pumped in water through these injection wells that's bringing in this heavy water. So it's about 8 pounds more than regular water per gallon. All right. So now you have this heavy water, and it could have all kinds of brackish type materials in it and chemicals because it's supposed to be destroyed somewhere. But no, they're pumping it back into the ground, into these shelves that are popping up through the tops of these oil wells. Then they call the EPA on them. The EPA comes and shuts the well down. The guy has to shut down. So the guy that had 200 wells now has 240 wells. Now, I'm not explaining as eloquently as I'm not an engineer on oil fields, but there's been some nefarious activity on that, so that it forces that owner to say, I can't afford to keep this pump going. I gotta block it. I gotta plug it off. And then they typically sell it for very low. Guess who comes in and buys it? The government. The government comes and buys that, and now they own that. That's a well that they own. And it's, I don't want to say any names yet because I have some names, but I want to make sure that what I say is right. So until I know, these are some well-known names in the United States and legislature that have allowed this to happen, who have also a vested interest in the companies now that are buying them to do, guess what? Carbon scores, carbon credits. So when you take some of this burn off stuff and you take garbage and you put it all together and you make this brand new incinerator plant on the Ohio River and you burn that stuff out, you get things like urea, you get hydrogen, you get carbons, okay, hydrocarbons, and you get the other one is arsenic. Oh, that's wonderful. So now you have all these things that you pump back into the ground, and guess what? You get a carbon credit in this new economy that we're looking at, where you worry about carbon scores, and then that's traded on the bond market.
Wow.
Okay, now I'm getting to those names because that's another field that's not mine, but I've been told this directly by the guy who has a stack of papers showing me who owns what, and we're following the money. And when these names are exposed, it's going to really be bad for a couple of states over here when they have to explain. Now you're buying up all this stuff. You're creating these burn pits, these burn incendiary things, so that you can have credit scores on your carbon credit, so that you can trade on the bond market.
So this isn't new then. What you're describing is a systematic attack that's been happening for some time, and maybe the residents that are showing this footage are only just noticing.
Right. The people that are running those rigs are seeing that all the time. Right. They're seeing water pop up in the middle of fields that are by rigs that are, where's this water coming from, coming through the field? And they don't know. So they're exploring it. But as soon as the EPA finds out, they come in and shut them down. But they won't show up whenever something like that happens. But they're out there looking at some water coming up the side of a rig. It just doesn't make sense. So now it does make sense, and it pushes those people out that have been here, the mid-level people, out. But the companies like DuPont, and companies that are owned by, ultimately invested in by BlackRock and Vanguard, those companies are doing just fine. They're taking off. They're doing great out here. The bigger corporations, the mid-level ones, these are roughly around $100-200 million companies. They're not the super companies. Those are being forced out. Those are mom and pops that have been passed on by generation. They're oil people. They're getting pushed aside. So you're seeing that happen. And what's happening? They're transferring migration, bringing in other people from buses, showing up from the border just across the river over there in West Virginia, just across the river over there in Pennsylvania. You've got people that are coming in from the border, just kind of hanging out with no jobs, nothing to do, but you're seeing it throughout our country. It's not just here, but this just happens to be a huge breadbasket / energy sector. Wow. Right? And this was the most telling thing of this whole trip for me, this one conversation. This lady lost her husband 6 months ago to COVID. She's 40-something years old, young lady. Her flag had some soot on it, 150 miles from the epicenter. She said, I've got a flag. I want to give you my husband's flag, his military flag. I want to give this to you because I want you to take a test on this thing and see what this is on here. So we did the proper collection, put it in several bags with gear on. We made sure we took it. We got it to the site. They're going to test it. But she said to me, she said, I grew up here. I'm a fourth generation um, resident of this area. Both my sides of my family are from here. I'll be damned if they're going to make me leave my home. This is where I grew up. She already knows it. And she's just a lady on the street that just is a mom and a part-time school teacher. Okay. So if they understand this, that they're getting pushed out of here, they're seeing it. They are seeing it. They're seeing the transfer migration take place. They're feeling it. People aren't speaking the same language on their street. They don't have a problem with that, but they do have a problem when the people that have been living here for years are getting forced out and can't find jobs.
Yes.
You
And
see
my
bigger
understanding as well, Dr. Chambers, is that it's right in an area where there are Amish communities that I know have been under attack as well, because of the fact that they're self-sufficient. They don't need the systems that are being set up. They can operate fully independently outside of that.
December 30th of last year, there's a guy named Miller, Amish guy. He got arrested for selling organic cattle on a ranch to table operation.
Yes.
Amish have been doing that for years. That's what they do.
Yes.
I mean, I do it in Oklahoma. Come arrest me. I mean, that's what we do, right? I mean, that's the level they're going. Now the charges were dropped, but the harassment still took place.
Yes.
Right? So
yeah, fear tactics. It's fear tactics.
Yes, and I've been talking to them, and I had dinner with them, and I'm going again tomorrow to meet some more Amish to find out about how they are able to produce such high crop levels and things like that. Because I'm interested in that, because I wonder, why is that the target? Why is this soil the target for this? Because I got to get down that level so that I can understand. So I want to know how they've been attacked, and they're coming out and saying we need some help because we have no representation from our government, from the local or federal.
Well, they're being attacked because the globalist model wants you inside a digital prison where you don't eat anything other than the poison that they feed you. And again, I mean, I've spoken about this so many times. Codex Alimentarius, the earliest documents I found go back to the 1960s, Dr. Chambers, where they said that they would be raising toxin levels and calling them safe and incrementally raising them so that the humans kind of get used to them. But meanwhile, we're, dying from illnesses, increased cancer, increased heart conditions, all this sort of stuff over the past few decades, and make nutrients essentially illegal, call nutrients toxins. And so that's what they're doing through the genetically modified foods that, Bill Gates is making billions from, and all of these smart agriculture models that they're rolling out will have to incorporate those poisons. They don't want people to have nutrition. They want us weak. They want us starving. They want us completely dependent on them, because that's the model. The model is
Right.
keep you imprisoned. And these, this video just came out. I might reference my Telegram channel. If people aren't in there, get in there now, please. Z Media, Zeee Media, one word. A new video has come out about the Muqab in the Middle East.